It's very easy to say one thing and do the same thing, right?
What you need to learn about is how you go about learning about things and what stops you from implementing that learning. Investing is not something you put money in one day and you take it out a week later.
Everyone's goal is different. You'll never have true freedom. You'll never have true happiness within your own life.
You need to know your cash flow.
When you go into that CEO role, it's resource allocation, right?
Doing nothing is as much of a choice as doing something.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that helps professional services firms from around the world increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Lesley Thomas, founder of the Money Confidence Academy. Lesley helps both corporate teams and individual parents understand their relationship with money, because as she'll tell you, financial well-being isn't just about having a pension or company benefits. It's about what's going on internally that truly impacts performance and success. Her podcast, Let's Talk Money and More, has reached the top 5% globally, and she's now a sought-after speaker on stages across the UK. Lesley is here today to share with us why money confidence is about far more than financial literacy and how understanding your money relationship can unlock success in both business and life. Lesley, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Saeed. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think it's a really important topic, especially now, especially in the UK as well, with money being not exactly the UK market isn't exactly booming at the moment. And so it's really important to understand and place value on how to actually manage money and think about money and how to move forward with what you do with your money. So I think this will be a really, really interesting conversation for our viewers and listeners. But I guess the best place to start any conversation is really to understand a little bit more about you, especially for our viewers and listeners who may not know who Lesley Thomas is. So maybe if you could share a little bit more about yourself and the Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career back in corporate telecommunications a few decades ago now. I know, I don't look it, I know. But I left corporate life because I wanted to have, more control of my time, more control of my finances. And I discovered that being a business owner, being an entrepreneur was something that really lit me up because it gave me that sense of control. So I set up the Money Confidence Academy because I noticed there was a big gap between how people behaved around money and as a result, the results they enjoyed with their money. And the Money Confidence Academy doesn't just focus on financial literacy. We often hear that not enough financial literacy is taught in schools. That is absolutely true. But actually, there's plenty of information with regards to how money works, what you need to do to make your money work. So if there's plenty of information out there, via the banks, via the trusted platforms, why is everybody not feeling more comfortable and confident about money? And that's where I step in, because our relationship with money has nothing to do with the numbers, but everything to do with how we think and feel about ourselves in terms of self-value, self-trust, self-belief, and actually taking the action we need to take in order to get the results that we want to get for ourselves.
I think it's really interesting, that approach to money, primarily because, you mentioned financial literacy is the term is tossed around from left, right, and center. You hear it all the time. You need to be financially literate. You need to know X, Y, and Z. You need to know how to read accounts. You need to know how to do X, Y, and Z. But it's very easy to say one thing and do the same thing, right? And 100%, I think mindset and the way you approach things and your behaviors and your relationship with money throughout your whole life result in how you look at it in your own world, right? And it's not a coincidence that some people are much more comfortable with money, whereas others are not. And so, it's a skill in itself to understand it. So I wanted to touch on, I guess, the topic of confidence with money, right? You talk about money confidence being a combination of literacy, mindset, and self-trust. Yeah. Can you break down why all three are essential and why isn't financial literacy alone just enough?
I think financial literacy alone is not enough, because if you haven't got self-trust, you're not going to take what you have learned, the knowledge you have acquired by reading a book or attending a course or talking to somebody about a particular financial subject. It's all very well being told what to do. It's very different having the self-confidence and the self-trust to do something with it. So if you don't believe you are ever going to successfully invest or successfully save a certain amount of money to buy, say, a house. So you're not going to save enough money to buy a deposit in order to buy a house. Then you are not going to take the action that is required to put into practice what you have been taught. A really good example of this is in the UK, in order to pass your practical driving test, you have to take your theory test first of all. So you are taught the theory around, how to drive a car, how to understand, the signs on the road, how to understand the dangers on the road. But if you don't have the confidence to actually, first of all, get behind the car and have lessons, or more importantly than that, take your practical driving test, it doesn't matter how well you've done in the theory, you have to actually apply it in the practical sense in the real world. And when people say there's not enough financial literacy taught at school, to begin with, all you need to know is how much money you've got coming in, how much money you've got going out, and to budget for what you need. That's all you need at the most basic level. Then you layer on, okay, saving and investing, two different things. What does that actually mean? What are the options that I have for myself when it comes to saving? What kind of savings should I have? Well, I should have rainy day savings. I should have short-term savings. I should have medium-term savings. And then for the longer term, I should think about investing. So actually the starting point, the building blocks with regards to our knowledge, we can very often use against us. Oh, I can't invest. I don't know how to do it. If you don't know how to do something, what were we taught in primary school? Put your hand up and ask the question. But if you're lacking in a sense of self-confidence, then putting your hand up and saying, I'm really sorry, but I don't understand the difference between an ISA and a LISA, because you don't want to show that lack of knowledge, that is a lack of self-trust. That is a lack of self-confidence. And then when somebody explains to you, well, an ISA is a vehicle for investing in the long term, a LISA is a vehicle for most people for saving towards your first mortgage, once you understand that, you can then start to make decisions. So that element of financial literacy, yes, is important, but you don't need to go into a classroom to actually learn about money. What you need to learn about is how you go about learning about things and what stops you from implementing that learning. Because everybody is able to understand the rudiments and then to trust themselves to find the right people to have conversations with regards to the things they don't understand, but then to make the commitment, I'm going to take action on this. Because that's where most people fall down. They don't take the action because they don't have the self-trust.
I absolutely love that. And where you spoke about how raising your hand, what we told in primary school, raising your hand if you don't know something, it reminds me of the phrase, you don't know what you don't know, right? And there's no such thing as a stupid question, because the reality is you don't know.
Yeah.
So the only way you're going to learn anything is to trust yourself to go out there, find the answers that you're looking for. And everyone wants to know different things in their life, and everyone's got their own trajectories, and everyone wants to do different things. But this is 100% an area where a lot of people are not confident in, and they don't trust themselves in. And so if you do not trust yourself in something like this, it's very important to find someone who can help you trust yourself by providing you with the knowledge. And yeah, okay, you can Google a few things here and there, but there's so much information out there right now. It's so hard to know what to believe. There's contradicting things that go out there online. And so it's really tough for anyone to really get what they need out of it. It can be overwhelming, right?
Can
Yeah.
be. And also, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going to either Google or ChatGPT for the very reasons that you've just said. There's misleading information. Google is driven by Google Ads. Adverts will say what they want to say to attract you to them. So, what I always say to my clients is go to those trusted sources of information. If you want to learn to cook a Victoria sponge, taking it, down to most basic level, yes, you could Google, how do I make a Victoria sponge? But goodness knows who you're going to come up with in terms of the best way to make that Victoria sponge. But for example, Mary Berry. We know Mary Berry is a great baker. We know she's written many books. We know she is trusted when it comes to making sponges. So what you do in that instance is you go and you look at a Mary Berry recipe for making a Victoria sponge. Exactly the same when it comes to money. The banks, for example, they now have so much information when it comes to understanding the basics. What's a mortgage? What's a credit card? What's a debit card? What's APR, etc., etc. So you can go there. But there are also other places that you can go to. The Money and Pension Service, for example. There's lots of places where you can have trusted information provided to you that is not going to be based on how much somebody is paying Google to display their advert or going to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is great, but right now we all know ChatGPT hallucinates. And unless you know the facts of what you're asking ChatGPT to interrogate, then you have no ability to recognize, oh, it's hallucinating there. So don't utilize social media platforms. Don't utilize influencers who are trying to get something from you. Actually go to those trusted sites and talk to people that you trust. So if somebody that you have trusted has benefited from a particular investment, have a conversation with them. What drew you to go and invest in that particular company? Have your returns always been positive, or have you seen ups and downs? Because what a lot of people do when it comes to investing is they hear in the media, oh, there's going to be a stock market crash. A little bit like Liberation Day back in April when Donald Trump brought in all those tariffs. The stock market did what we knew the stock market would do. It absolutely tanked. But what did it do a few days later? It went back to the same levels and more that it had been at. Investing is not something you put money in one day and you take it out a week later. Investing is something you do for the long term. Yes, there will be highs, there will be lows, but it will keep doing this. And over the long term, nobody has lost out on investing when they see it's for the long game. But if what you're trying to do is to create a rainy day fund or an emergency fund, or as I prefer to call it, a soft landing fund, then there you find a savings account that has a high rate of interest on return, and look at how many times might I need to access that money. How long can I lock that money away for? But what happens if I need it in the short term? Can I get access to it? So you make your money work in the way that matches the goals that you have for your money. And that's what people need to think about is, what are the goals I have for my money and how can I effectively plan for those goals? And then what do I need to do to get the return that I need on that money to match my goals?
Yeah. No, you're spot on in the sense that it's like going into your fridge and then looking at what you have and then going, oh, what can I make out of it? When in reality, that's what most people do. In reality, what you really should be doing is going, what do I want? and then you go and get the things you need or the ingredients you need to make what you want, right? And so like understanding your goals is super, super important because everyone's goal is different. And
Yeah.
so 100%, I think it's really interesting, I guess, for the viewers and listeners out there to understand that if you want to do a certain thing, you need to understand that there are different traits and characteristics involved in achieving those goals wherever you want to go. I want to move over to speaking more about the Money Confidence Academy and really understanding exactly how you help your clients and all those who come to you to be able to assist them with something like this. Because it's obviously a difficult decision. Go and find someone they trust, as you mentioned, to be able to help them with. So tell me more about the Money Confidence Academy.
So everything I do is based around my signature framework, which is called the Money Confidence Code. And I have a Money Confidence Code one-to-one program, Money Confidence Code group program, but also Money Confidence Code corporate edition. And each one is tweaked according to who I am taking through that particular program. I can take certain elements of it and deliver it for a lunch and learn session, a breakfast session, a workshop, a webinar, or I can deliver the whole program depending on what the client or client's needs are. So the main program obviously will take longer to go through, and that's for somebody that recognizes they want to understand the nuts and bolts of their relationship with money. So they want to start off with radical responsibility. That is the first element of the code. And radical responsibility is accepting your ability to change whatever you want to change, but not just accepting you can change it by deciding you're going to take action. Because it goes back to what I said earlier on. A lot of people will go on a course, will go on a webinar, will go on a masterclass, and they go, yeah, that was great. And they go away and they do nothing with it. They've wasted their time, essentially. So what I help people to do is to understand why they are stuck where they are, the effect it is having on them currently, and what they need to do to change that, to change what is going on for them, and to start taking the action that they need to take, and then to see the results that they are creating as evidence of what is possible for them. Because a lot of people will create the results, will create the evidence, but because of a lack of self-belief, they will pass those results off, oh, that was just down to luck, or I'll never be able to do that again, or I'll never surpass that. That's as good as it's going to get. But when you create the evidence, you give yourself choice. You have the choice to do nothing or the choice to do something. And whichever way you go, it is a choice. Doing nothing is as much of a choice as doing something. But when you start fully believing in radical responsibility, and this is really important, going back to what you said right at the beginning with regards to what is going on in the UK economy at the moment. We have a situation at the moment where a lot of people are allowing the decisions of one person, i.e. the Chancellor of the Exchequer, they're allowing her to decide what they will do in their business, with their lives, etc. And what they're choosing to do right now is nothing. They are literally sitting and waiting. Is she going to take my pension? Is she going to hammer me with more taxation? Am I going to end up having to pay tax on my property rental returns, etc., etc.? If you just sit and wait for somebody else to decide what happens to you, that is completely the opposite of radical responsibility. Whatever Rachel Reeves decides on the 26th of November, and yes, it's likely to be uncomfortable, we have no control over that. What we do have control over right now is plan for the worst, hope for the best, put things in place that are going to shore up how you are going to manage your finances, your business finances, your goals, etc. going forward. Sitting and waiting like a sitting duck, waiting for whatever to rain down on you is not going to change the outcome. And I firmly believe that when we choose to look at our business, our goals, the results we want to create, and believe that in spite of what happens at the end of November, we can create success, then we can almost get our heads down and we can wait to see what happens, and then we can replot our course accordingly. Because if we sit and wait, the outcome is never going to be as good as actually ignoring it and planning for yourself and getting on with creating those results and not waiting for somebody else to fire the gun.
100%. Taking action is probably the most important skill that anyone can develop, right? And you can learn all these new things and new skills and anything new. But if you don't apply what you've learned or apply the learnings immediately, and it's not like, oh, I'll do it in a few days or I'll do it because a few days turns into a few weeks, a few weeks turns into a few months. And before you know it, a few years have gone down the line and you've not done anything to move out of where the position you're in. And so taking action is probably the number one skill that people need to develop, because by having radical responsibility, it forms the natural progression to go, okay, well, if I'm responsible for my own circumstances, I have to do things now and I have to apply everything that I've learned now. And the point you mentioned there with regards to evidence, and evidence really, whether it's you going to the gym and you start seeing you lose a little bit of weight or anything else that along the line, as soon as you see evidence upon evidence, and evidence stacked is confidence gained, right? Because evidence is proving to yourself that you can do something. And just by doing that, you build the confidence required to get that self-trust that you need to move forward. So I think that's really interesting. You mentioned that. What are some of the most common ways people get in their own way when it comes to money? And I'm sure you've seen many, but what are the most common ways you think?
It usually comes down to a lack of awareness and a lack of real self-belief. So it's the money stories, they tell themselves with regards to, it's not possible for me. I'll never be able to do that. My family have only ever, so I will only ever. So it is allowing yourself to be prevented from moving forward because of a lack of what you believe is possible for you. And I always remind my clients to go back to how they felt, as a child. When somebody said to them, what are you going to be, when you grow up? And they would come up with, I'm going to fly to the moon. I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to invent this, that, and the other. What happened to that sense of belief? What happened to that sense of art of the possible? Life happened, but more importantly, things ate away at your sense of self-confidence and self-belief. Because when we are younger, we'll run around the house saying, Mum, look at me, I'm flying, I'm flying. All you're doing is flapping your Batman cape, but in your mind, you're flying.
Yeah.
And I think it's reconnecting to that sense of who you were when you were younger and what happened to eradicate that sense of self-belief. Because you had it, the evidence is there. So if you had it, it means you're capable of recreating it. And the difference between people who are successful and those who are not successful is not that they have never made mistakes. It's not that they haven't had circumstances thrown at them that make it difficult for them to succeed. Instead, they have picked themselves up and they've had the self-trust to try again and to try again and to try again. And then eventually something happens and it works and they move forward from there. But a lot of what I see in people is they pass that control over to somebody else and they allow themselves to believe what that other person believes about them. And they go on to create a sense of self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't believe it's possible for me. Therefore, I'm not going to take the action, or I'm going to take the opposite action, and I'm going to turn around and go, see, I told you so. I told you I was never going to be more than I set out to be. And then that really does put them into the mindset of victim mindset. And once you fall into victim mindset, that is when you allow external circumstances to control your action. And I'm not being political in saying this, but whilst the majority of us don't like what the government is doing right now, my belief is if you don't like it, do something about it. Don't be a victim. You have to accept, obviously, from a legal perspective, you have to accept whatever changes are coming down the line, but it is possible to change your circumstances. You can earn more money. You can look at ways of developing side hustles. You can look at all the ways you can find your way around whatever the plan is with regards to tax increases, etc., etc. But what you must never, ever do is allow your life to be dictated by somebody else's circumstances. And that is what is happening at the moment. A lot of people are allowing themselves to have their lives influenced by somebody else's circumstances. And when you do that, it's very, very difficult to get yourself back on track until you get back to a point of believing in radical responsibility. I am responsible. I will take control of the situation and I will do whatever is necessary because my back is against the wall and I'm going to spring forward. I'm not going to allow somebody else's circumstances to decide my future.
I couldn't agree more with everything you've said there and the sentiment around it, primarily because everyone has their own journey. Everyone has a difficult time in their own right? Yeah. But if you let external circumstances dictate how you end up living your life, you'll never live the life that you want to live, right? You'll never have true freedom. You'll never have true happiness within your own life. And of course, you'll have happy moments and stuff, things like that. But there'll be difficulties because you're letting the external factors control what is going on within your life. And you touched on the point of earning more money. And some people might turn around and go, oh, how do I earn more money and all these things? But we live in a time now, greater than any other time, where you can make more money than you've ever been able to make through the use of the internet, through the use of skill acquisition, through the use of just understanding that if you do work on a side hustle, if you do work on things on the side, you can make more money. The only thing is, it's without that radical responsibility element, the hard work that is required to be able to do that doesn't come into play because you don't feel responsible for your circumstances. Yeah. So I absolutely agree with what you've said there. And I could talk about this all day, but naturally we have to go into the next segment of the podcast, which is what we call the Entrepreneur's Room. And that's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders think and operate when running their business. So at this stage of the podcast, I always like to ask the same question, which is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
So I think probably as a leader right now, the most important thing to be is visible, because I think if you're not visible, then nobody has an awareness of what you are doing. So I ensure that I'm posting regularly on social media. I ensure I'm regularly in the right rooms. I ensure that it's very, very clear how I think and feel with regards to how everybody can become more money confident. I also firmly believe that financial literacy doesn't start at school. It starts in the home. So I talk about that on a regular basis as well. And I lead by example. I am not afraid to go live across the social media platforms. I am not afraid of actually speaking, at senior levels to government organizations, etc., with regards to the right approach to ensuring that more people are financially capable. Because I don't think, as you know, financial literacy is necessarily what we should be aiming for. That is just part of that puzzle, basically. And I ensure I surround myself with the right people, because I think that has the biggest influence on how most of us behave, who we are hanging out with. And if we're hanging out with negative people, then unfortunately that's going to have a massive effect on us. So I will remove myself from spaces where I feel there is too much negativity, and I will directly insert myself in places within collaborations where I feel I can inspire and be inspired. But I think probably the one thing that I do that a lot of people don't do is I ask. So if I don't understand something, I will find out. I will ask the question. And I will ask people who I want to collaborate with to collaborate if I feel the two of us coming together is going to have more impact and benefit than us trying to approach things separately.
I love that. I love that primarily because you're touching on all the most important elements of being a leader, which is being out there, being comfortable with sharing your expertise, but also understanding that collaboration helps share the message and inspire others to be able to learn the things that you are able to teach. So I think that's really important. What are the most important metrics for you when running the business?
I think understanding your numbers is hugely important. So understanding, what's coming in and what's going out.
Practicing what you preach.
Absolutely. And for a lot of people, when they first recognize they have an issue with their relationship with money, is when they're not checking their bank accounts regularly. And if you're not checking your bank account regularly, you're not checking that information, because that's all the numbers are, is information, and information upon which you can take action. So you need to know your cash flow. You need to understand where you're heading to in terms of what do you want to achieve, short, medium, longer term. A lot of people, will hand their numbers across to their accountant, and they're expecting their accountant to be a font of knowledge in terms of how they can grow and scale their business. A lot of accountants will literally crunch the numbers, tell you how much to pay HMRC, and that's job done. And that is not something I would ever recommend to anybody. I am not a numbers person from an accountancy perspective at all. But I want to work with an accountant who is able to help me to utilize those numbers to reverse engineer. Where do I want to be? What do I need to do to get there? What is the evidence saying with regards to my progression on that journey? And when you understand that, then you are able to make those numbers apply in real terms rather than be something to either beat yourself over the head with, as a lot of people do, or bury your head in the sand with, which an equal amount of people do, when you actually see them as something that is evidence of, am I on the right path? What do I need to do more of? What do I need to do less of? And what do I need to give other people to do because it's not my area of expertise? And I think when you move from being a founder in your organization to being chief exec of your organization, then you need to be looking at different things and being really aware of what you're good at and what you need to either bring other people into the organization for because they're better at, or the things that you're not so good at, let go of your ego and hand it over to somebody else.
Surrounding yourself with experts is one of the first lessons that I learned starting off with my business as well. Is you don't know everything, right? And as a founder, you have to wear a lot of hats to run the business. And I love the fact that you said that it was the role and relationship between a founder and a CEO is very different, right? When you go into that CEO role, it's resource allocation, right? You have to bring in the right people into the organization. You have to be able to know who are the right people or what the business needs to be able to go in the right direction, right? And hire the right people, bring in the right accountants, bring in the right team around it to be able to achieve what you're looking to achieve and hit the goals that you're looking to. So how are you currently, and I know you touched on it before and being in the right spaces, but how are you currently growing the business? What are the business development, sales, marketing activities you're doing to grow the business?
Collaboration. Collaboration is massively important for my business, because if you haven't got collaboration, then there is too much on you being able to achieve everything that you want to achieve. So for me, all my biggest successes have been through collaborating with the right people and ensuring what my business is bringing and what the other organization's business is bringing is what is required by the market that we are serving. So for me, I come from a corporate background. I am used to working with teams. I am used to working with people who have completely different expertise to me. And I think if you work in a siloed environment, then you are going to miss out on everything that is going on outside of that silo. AI is a great example. I would never say that, and I am not a technical person, a techie person by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't want to be left behind either when it comes to probably the biggest technological advancement, of my lifetime, of anyone's lifetime right now, probably. But I do not want to be that person that goes and develops the things that I can see being beneficial to my business and therefore beneficial to those that I work with. So what I am doing is collaborating with somebody who is an expert in the AI space. So I think for me, collaboration is and will always be a key part of what I do. I'm a people person. I love sharing and celebrating together rather than it being a solo activity. And I definitely think we can create more in terms of the proposition, the product, and the results when it's a shared enterprise rather than it being a solo enterprise.
I love that. I love that. In terms of, you've been running the business for a number of years now, and you've had your own podcast in the top 5% globally. What are the biggest lessons you could share with us in your time as being an entrepreneur, business owner? I'm sure you've made many mistakes, as we all have. So what are the biggest lessons you could share with us today?
Be more visible right from the beginning. Don't resist visibility, because I resisted visibility at the beginning, and it was very uncomfortable realizing I was wrong, first of all. I remember thinking when I'll change my LinkedIn profile from, my corporate identity through to my new business identity, and people will just queue up to work with. I won't need to share any pictures of me on social media. I certainly won't need to go live or do any videos or talk on podcasts or anything. I won't need to do any of that. That was a big waste of time and a load of rubbish, an absolute load of rubbish. And I remember the very first time I went live on Facebook, the 6th of August, 2020. Remember the exact date. And it was appalling, but most first times are appalling for anything. And I learned from that. And now I know I'm a good speaker. I'm a good communicator. I do well when I get out from worrying about how my hair is looking today, etc., etc. So visibility was definitely a key one. Second one, be vulnerable. Because I think we all can feel, I can't show where I've gone wrong. I can't show, I'm struggling to cope with all of this. I can't show that I'm feeling under pressure. And I can remember 4 years ago when the pressure of building a business, the pressure right back then of doing it all by myself, emotionally was just too much for me. And it was only when I had an emotional breakdown with my husband, crying, big fat wet tears, etc. I can't do it anymore. And my husband said, "Why have you not spoken to me about this?" And I thought, yeah, why have I not spoken to you about it? So I think it is the sense of vulnerability. Yes, I do believe in, share from the scar, not from the wound. I do believe in that, because I don't think anybody really needs to see us, visit crying on a LinkedIn Live or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But share that learning, because there are other people that are going through that in the same way as you. And I think ask more questions. I think I wish I asked more questions in the beginning rather than, coming into the online world when I'd been in the offline world. Coming to the online world, there was so much I didn't understand, the language that was used, etc. And I think I should have asked more questions early on. And now, now I'm visible, now I'm vulnerable, and now I ask questions, all to my betterment and hopefully, my clients' betterment as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All three of them, I think, are so important. Visibility. I can sort of speak from my own point. Before starting this podcast, it was always on my mind, start a podcast. We should do a podcast. And it was always like, I have to get on camera. I have to, like, I'm going to be putting myself out there. We're going to
Yeah.
be having conversation with, and the self-talk delayed. And I remember speaking to my wife about it, and she was like, just do it. Just do it. Like, there's no like, so what if few people see it or don't see it, or just do it. And I remember thinking to myself, even at that point, I'm not ready, it's not right, like. And then eventually, that first time, compared to what we do now in terms of the conversations I can have now on a podcast, I'm much more comfortable. The first few are always, as you mentioned with the Facebook Live, that first time, it's a bit more scary, daunting, and you prepare, but you're not prepared, right? But as time goes on, the more you do it, the more you become visible, the more you actually put yourself out there, the more you become vulnerable in front of others in the right way, the more things work out to your betterment, right?
Yeah.
And without a doubt, being inquisitive and curious and asking questions, that's a sign of any real great leader, because a great leader doesn't feel like they've got all the answers. They know they don't have all the answers. And it's really about going out there and finding the answers required to move yourself closer to those goals. So I think every single point you and every single lesson you shared there was fantastic. And Lesley, it's been an absolutely fantastic and conversation that I really think was valuable for our viewers and listeners, because there's a lot of lessons throughout our conversation where people can go away and apply it to themselves and think a bit more clearly surrounding money. I like to end every single podcast with the same question, which is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one of your business problems, what would that be?
Oh my goodness, I wish you'd prepared me for that question.
We like to surprise everyone with this one.
What would I, if I could wave a magic wand, probably to really understand how I can garner the power of AI into
Mm.
my business. Because whilst, I utilize bits and pieces of AI, I even went on a vibe coding workshop last week. Right now, I know I'm not utilizing. Maybe AI is still too early doors to fully integrate, because we hear so much about, I'm an AI expert. 2 years ago, you probably weren't even using ChatGPT. So how come all of a sudden you're an AI expert? Maybe it's too early doors, but I think for me, if I could say wave a magic wand and somebody was able to look what I do, the vision I have for the business, and go, here we are, it's all done for you. I think that would be what I would wish for.
Amazing. Well, Lesley, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. For all our viewers and listeners out there who may want to reach out to you, how can they find you? Where do they need to go?
Okay, probably the easiest place is my website, because everything is on my website, access to all my social media, podcast, etc. So it's themoneyconfidenceacademy.com.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes where anyone can dive in. Again, absolute pleasure, Lesley. Thank you very much.
Thank you.